So yesterday I recorded a video about prejudices from one's eating habits, right? I mentioned how if you don't eat the same way as mainstream, a lot of times you're just out, right? One of my subscribers doesn't believe it. I gotta point out something. Nobody's gonna tell you the exact reason why they failed to include you in an event. And a lot of times these things don't even happen at the conscious level, right? Nobody's going to sit around and poke at you for not eating something, but it's at the back of their minds, right? I was actually sometimes when you get somebody in the right mood, they could point it out. I was interviewing at a job for a tutoring agency, and we had gone to a local diner restaurant, and I needed to point out some dietary restrictions to the waiter. And after I did that, my interviewer, who I don't know why he pointed this out. I would imagine this is not something that he would normally say, but I got him in the right mood. We were talking very personally. He told me, did you realize that this is a job where you have to go to a family's home? I said, yeah, that's what I signed up for. This was before the pandemic, when you could actually go to a family's home to do tutoring. Right nowadays, that might be a little bit trickier. Actually, we're getting back to that. And he mentioned that, is this going to be a problem if the family offers you food or they're eating around you? And for a second, I panicked that somebody would ask me this. Like, how do I answer? I didn't prepare for this question, right? This is not something I would normally think about at the interview. So I kind of put aside the question by saying that, I've dealt with this problem all my life, and I'm healthy, so I'll deal with it when it comes, right? And I know what to do. But long story short, I didn't get that job. I don't know if that was the reason. I tried to bait the interviewer to, when he emailed me saying that I didn't get the job, I asked him, is there any questions you have for, I thanked him again, but at the bottom of the email I asked him if this is a concern for the food allergies, let me know, and I'll see what I can do about it. I was trying to bait him for a response that the reason he didn't hire me was that. He was smart enough to not even answer that. See, if the reason wasn't that, he might have answered, right? But anyways, so that's the problem that you run into, right? You'll never hear the exact reason somebody doesn't include you. And this is exactly one reason why I wanted to leave the United States. People center their lives around food, and they forget that their food is really an extension of their medicine, right? You would never center your life around antidepressants that you take, around whether or not one wants to get this injection that Biden wants to mandate right now that is going to the Supreme Court today, right? But unfortunately, when it comes to this other drug that we take by mouth, oh my God, I don't know why we can center our lives around that. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember thinking that the United States is probably going to have the worst outcome, and I based that on two things that I observe when I travel. I used to travel in Taiwan a lot, and in Taiwan, people actually think of their food as part of their medicine. I was staying in a hostel, and people were not shy about avoiding certain foods or eating certain foods because they had health concerns, right? It's not uncommon for somebody at the dinner table to say, well, maybe that's not for me because I'm dealing with whatever health condition, right? That was not uncommon to hear. Now, the problem is that a lot of times people push their healthy ways on other people, right? In Taiwan, they have socialized medicine, so I guess sometimes other people's health concerns can be your concerns too. And it's not uncommon to hear somebody comment on unhealthy ways, right? You got to remember, 2-3 years ago, I used to have a compulsive binge eating problem, and I would be in Taiwan, and my family members would point it out. Even strangers that I meet at the hostel would point out that I was eating too much. That's life in Taiwan, right? Here in the United States, we don't like to do that, but in the United States, we like to eat what we like. We like to have unhealthy lifestyles, and then when we have a problem, oh, it's not our fault, right? We could be eating junk food nonstop. We could have a cigarette habit. and compromise our immune system, right? And then we catch a virus that really should just pass right through us, but instead of it sends us to intensive care. Oh, it's not your fault, right? And they mark it as a statistic that somebody got sick or died of a virus from another country. Right? We love to blame other people, right? And not blame ourselves for the our lifestyle that contributed to the problem, right? I mean, it's one thing that we mark the disease as, the death or the hospital stay as coming from one problem. It's another that we continue our unhealthy lifestyles and just keep accepting these outcomes, right? So I thought for sure that's how Americans would handle it. My first day of the quarantine, I went to the local grocery store, and people were fighting over all sorts of unhealthy stuff, right? The healthy stuff was still on the shelves. The unhealthy stuff was gone. And the beer aisle was a mess. People were grabbing beer, and there were broken bottles everywhere. And then there was a huge mountain of Corona beer because nobody wanted it. It was just really, really funny to see, right? And I thought, oh God, we're going to come out of this. Even if we didn't have a pandemic going in, we're going to have a pandemic coming out of this, right? I remember thinking that. Although later that day, I went to my favorite walking trail, and it was pretty packed too because people had nothing better to do, right? So I remember thinking that at the end of this, we're going to have really healthy people and really unhealthy people, right? A big gulf in between them. We're going to be even more divided than we already were, right? Now, the other thing I noticed in the United States was that even before the pandemic, I had an idea of social distancing because I have food allergies and I react badly to milk product. I have eczema. And I remember how difficult it was to get people to accept social distancing. And I thought, okay, good luck now. I would be on an airplane and I would tell people about my food allergies, and occasionally, not everybody, but occasionally you would get somebody with the attitude that it's not their problem. Oh, okay, I hope you feel that way when there's an emergency and we actually have to divert the plane, right? If you could feel that way, okay, then it might not be your problem. So I remember thinking how hard it was to get people to accept social distancing, and now you have to get everybody to listen to that. And sure enough, 2 years later, guess what country has the worst problem? Thanks for watching.